Hello and welcome. I'm Marnie Richards. I'm the Education and Outreach Coordinator for Florida Wildlife Federation. Our mission here at FWF is to safeguard Florida's water, wildlife, and wild spaces by taking action today to prevent irretrievable loss tomorrow. Florida is one of the most biodiverse states in the country, but we're also one of the most threatened. Habitat loss, invasive species, development pressure, they all put pressure on our precious wildlife, and our wildlife needs all the help we could give it. Conservation doesn't just happen on a large scale. It happens in our backyards, on our patios, in our schoolyards, in our neighborhood parks, at businesses, and planters and window boxes. And tonight, we're going to follow two Florida communities that decided that conservation wasn't an abstract and that they could do something about it on a community level. They're going to talk to you about what that looks like and what you can do where you live. So tonight we're going to be joined by Courtney Sullivan, who's the Community Habitat Director for the National Wildlife Federation, where she's been for 18 years. She works with communities across the country to restore wildlife habitat and to build local coalitions that help make it stick. She's going to be our guide tonight to the Community Wildlife Habitat Program to help understand how it works, what certification actually requires, and how Florida communities can actually benefit by pursuing it. And Jessica Volek is the Natural Resources Manager for Destin Fort Walton Beach Tourism and Development Department, where Jessica leads coastal conservation work, including sea turtle protection, marine debris removal, and lionfish control. And she's going to bring kind of a regional perspective to tonight's conversation and showing ways to connect with residents, with the audience. So please feel free to put your questions in the comment section and we'll answer as many of them as we can. Okay. All right, so settle in and we'll start with Courtney. And Courtney, Florida, we have like an extraordinary range of species that depend on healthy plant communities. And where does a home garden actually fit into that picture?
Sure. Well, let me introduce you to a little bit of background about the program. Since 1973, that's 53 years, the National Wildlife Federation, through its Garden for Wildlife program, has engaged homeowners, businesses, schools, universities, places of worship, parks, community-based organizations, and others in creating and certifying wildlife-friendly habitat landscapes in their communities. Our programs share a wealth of information, resources, and sound scientific advice to help you grow your habitat. Whether it's a yard, a community space, a container garden, you can make a difference for wildlife. When you create gardens using native plants, the impact on local wildlife is immediate. Small-scale native plant gardens that incorporate blooming plants in all seasons are proven to increase pollinator visitors. Even small changes to your garden can begin supporting hundreds of animal species, including insects, birds, mammals, and increase the biodiversity of your neighborhood. The total certified wildlife habitats in Florida is habitats. Through this collective action, habitat connectivity is increasing. Gardeners are a key part of this large movement to support biodiversity and wildlife. And the work that they are doing in their own yards and outdoor spaces is having a very positive impact. When we change how we landscape and garden to focus on creating habitat for native species, wildlife and people can thrive together.
Tell us about the four essential elements that wildlife needs to survive and thrive, and that a wildlife habitat needs to provide this for our local native species.
An ideal certified wildlife habitat will plant with a purpose to provide the essential habitat elements, which are food, such as native plants that offer nectar from flowers and seeds and cones from trees. Also, supplemental feeders can be helpful, but require ongoing maintenance. Next is water. Wildlife need a clean water source for drinking or bathing. Something small like a pollinator puddling dish is actually very helpful. Plus, we have cover. Wildlife needs shelter from bad weather. Both predators and prey need hiding places such as evergreen trees and shrubs. And lastly, places to raise young. Wildlife need places for courtship behavior, mating, and to bear and raise their young. And this is an intentional step so that we can think more about how wildlife interacts with our space. So together, these basic habitat elements, we suggest that a minimum goal of 70% native plants are used, those that provide multi-season blooms, and that the garden is maintained without pesticides or herbicides. Now, once native plants are established, they are easy to maintain because they thrive in the soils, moisture, and weather of your region and support the local food web for a variety of wildlife species. When you create a space that provides these essential habitat elements, food, water, cover, and places to raise young, along with practical sustainable gardening, the National Wildlife Federation will recognize you as a certified wildlife habitat via an online self-completed checklist. Anyone can create a welcoming haven for local wildlife by turning your yard, balcony, container garden, schoolyard, work landscape, or roadside into a habitat garden that can make a lasting difference for wildlife. Become part of the movement by certifying your habitat efforts as a certified wildlife habitat with us. Also, a portion of every certification fee is donated to our local affiliate partner, the Florida Wildlife Federation.
So people often wonder, you talk about the four essential elements, and people often wonder, can I do that if I don't have a big space? Can I do that if I don't really have a yard? Can you just talk about that for just a moment? Because a lot of people live in apartments or places where they don't really have access to much space at all. And we'll probably hear about that a little bit from our community partners, but if you could say just a bit about that.
Sure, any space can make a difference. Container gardening is actually very impactful. The goal really is to provide habitat connectivity. So we're talking flyways, we're talking opportunities for them to visit a variety of different size landscapes. So it is valuable to have a small side yard or a container garden or just maybe the right-of-way section of in front of your apartment building. A circle, there's all sorts of smaller community opportunities. So if you don't have your own kind of yard or land, there's opportunities usually in the community for you to maybe host a smaller space, and all of these place habitat opportunities for stopping and taking a drink or having a snack is very valuable to the overall ecosystem habitat connectivity.
Okay, great. And I know that we'll hear a little bit more about that from our community leaders about other opportunities that people can have kind of just outside their own individual space. The Community Wildlife Habitat Program has been running since, I think we have this right, since 1997, and now works with nearly 400 communities nationwide. Can you tell us, how does individual garden certification that we're talking about, certifying your garden as having the four elements and primarily native species and sustainable practices, how does that individual garden certification kind of connect upward to the whole community's certification?
Certainly, yeah. The National Wildlife Federation's Community Wildlife Habitat Program partners with cities, towns, counties, neighborhoods, and HOAs, really communities of all kinds to become healthier, sustainable, and more wildlife friendly. Community wildlife habitat teams garden and plant, reduce or eliminate the use of pesticides, supporting integrating wildlife friendly practices into like city sustainability plans, park planning, tree ordinances. So these teams, they earn community-wide certification by supporting certifying individual properties like homes, parks, schools, businesses, places of worship as certified wildlife habitats. And then also by doing education and outreach activities across their community. Now, these education and outreach points are earned by engaging community members in a variety of activities like habitat restoration projects or invasive species removals,
Mhm.
Providing resources like native plant lists, seed libraries, or tree giveaways, and communicating through outreach tabling, websites, and social media. Each community team works on issues and projects that are important to them, opportunities. Our program offers a framework and a resource center to support these community teams as they are either just getting started or working to take their conservation efforts to the next level. The National Wildlife Federation's Community Wildlife Habitat program provides an opportunity for these community teams to earn national recognition while taking concrete steps to restore, enhance, and connect wildlife habitat. Across Florida, there are 63 participating registered and certified communities. That's the most in any one state. And a few examples I'd love to shout out
Okay.
are Broward County, who has been a partner for 21 years, plus Satellite Beach and Okaloosa County with their community team representatives joining us to talk more this evening.
Great. Thank you.
Here we have a
Yeah.
map. It's kind of hard to see going from top to bottom. These are the 63 participating communities here on the map.
Great. Thanks. That's a good overview. And we're going to get into those specific Florida stories. At first, I want to ask our two community leaders about what do you think, just as a very simple introduction for people, what's a good first step? Or what do you usually like to recommend people who are just starting to think about converting an outdoor space into a wildlife habitat? Jessica, what's one idea that you have or one step that you like to share with people?
I mean, for, when we've been trying to convince people to do this, one of the big things is that we just tell them, like, you probably have so much more than you even realize. Like, even having a small garden, even having natural grasses or anything within your yard, like, you could put in a bird bath and it would be something that is that simple. And I think, when people first look into the program and like certifying their property, they look at it and they're like, I have to have all these things. Like, I don't know if I can have all of these things. But usually if you have one of them, chances are high that you pretty much meet, the categories for, or each category. And so I just really try to show people, hey, you have this one thing. It's not going to be that hard to be able to accomplish these other things. And, and they go hand in hand with each other. And I think it's making it easy for them and showing them, the things that they already have and giving them quick, easy suggestions of extra things that they could add in addition. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thanks. Carly, what would you think on that score? Is there anything particular that maybe that hasn't been covered that you'd like to point out to people who are really just thinking about getting started and maybe a little overwhelmed?
Yeah, I like, we'll piggyback off what Jessica said. She put it together pretty well. Honestly, most people already have these things in their yard. They just are unaware of what plant species they have that they're supporting or what kind of species they're supporting with those plants themselves. And I really like to push adding a fresh water source because that will bring in more wildlife than you would expect than adding a bird feeder, in my opinion. And I think inspiring the people, seeing the actual live animals and critters that are using the little bit of water that they put out that they might not think is a huge step in the right direction, but it really does make a huge impact on the local animals and wildlife in their own backyard. And that in itself inspires people to maybe take the next few steps to even support the bees that they see drinking out of their water every day.
Thanks for bringing that up. That's really important. I mean, we've just, well, we're still on the cusp of what's been a pretty long drought in Florida, certainly in North Florida. And, animals need that additional water source. They almost always can find food, particularly in, a temperate climate. They really, like you say, they really need that water source. And it'll bring particularly birds that you won't see stop at the bird feeder. They'll be in your bird bath. So that often excites people too, to be able to see that. Oh, thanks. Good. Well, let's hear more about the particular Florida stories, and we'll start with Jessica. And can you tell us something about what made your community decide that this was worth pursuing? Like, was there particularly something that pointed you towards this program?
Yes, and it may not be the typical story that most people would think of. So I've been in my position for a little over 5 years now. And about 5 years ago, when I had just started, we were a team of three. So we are a natural resources team. We started out as just coastal. We focused on just, our beaches and our coastline. And we had a gentleman come to us who he was trying to get his neighborhood certified as a community wildlife habitat. And he had done quite a bit of stuff, but he was just having a really hard time getting enough certification points. So he had the outreach, he had education and resources, but he was having a hard time certifying his neighborhood. And so I think, was just kind of like, you guys have this team that could do so much more, and you focus on such a larger area. Why not, do Okaloosa County? And so we were like, yeah, let's take it on. We'll see what we can do. And I mean, the planning stages of it were a lot of fun and were fairly not easy, but easy because we had so many, people to work with, so many properties to work with. And I'll talk about it a little bit later, but we piggyback a lot of these efforts off of so many things that we're already doing. So it was, and unfortunately he came to us a while ago and we went really hard on it in the beginning, and then, got busy with other projects and our team expanding. But now that our team has expanded so much and grown, we're going to be able to really, finally reach that official community wildlife habitat certification.
That's great. That's great. Continuing with Jessica, because your team works at like an intersection of coastal tourism and conservation. And is there a way that your community, or your team rather, makes a step towards asking residents to think about their own backyards and neighborhoods and conservation?
Yeah, definitely. So my team, we are within our tourism development department, and that, we're a little unique in that way. Most tourism departments throughout the state of Florida do not have marine biologists and biologists within their staff. We are a staff of 8 now, and 8 or 9. We're about to be bringing on a 9th person. And so, with this expansion in our team, we used to be just coastal. Now we've expanded throughout the entire county. We do focus on tourism. I mean, a lot of the projects that we work on, are funded through our tourism tax dollars, but they benefit our locals as well. And so a lot of the projects that we work on, we need that community input. We need that community support to be able to do what we want to do. And so a big thing that we've been working on now is creating a lot of parks and recreational use areas for our tourists and our locals to enjoy. And a lot of these, they back up to locals and people who live in the area. And so being able to show them like, hey, we're doing this kind of work over here, but you guys can do it too here. Again, just providing them with the resources that they need. But, we do focus a lot of our efforts on our tourists, but we would never be able to do the work that we do and create a, and thrive with a program like this if it weren't for our community members, our locals, the people who live here year round. And now that we've expanded throughout the whole county, we have so much more reach, and we work with our locals on a lot of our projects. And, so everything that we do, even though we are tourism, it comes back to help our locals more than our tourists most of the time.
Right. You mentioned your whole county, and you're coordinating across a pretty large geographic area. And I wonder how you connect with people who aren't in the coastal cities, but who are in other parts of Okaloosa. You've kind of touched on that a little bit, but do you have any thoughts about kind of what's moved people who maybe aren't already conservation minded, or who maybe not don't know about your tourism projects and
Yeah. So now that, our team has expanded into the northern part of the county, we work with a lot of our local community on these projects, but a lot of our local businesses and organizations and, people who we need to get plants for these different planting projects that we have, and we're getting them from our local businesses and our local nurseries and everything. And so, working with them, building that relationship has been a great way to tell people about this project. And, we've expanded so much of our efforts into the northern part of the county. And so when we first started doing it, we were a little bit more focused on the southern end, just because that's where we were and where we were working out of. And the groups that we were working with were all in the southern part of the county. And so now that we've been able to, build these parks and create these recreational areas, every park that we're making right now that we're working on is going to be a certified wildlife habitat, that in itself. So that will be,
that's cool.
Yeah. And so, and with these projects, every project that we have, we take lots of volunteers. We love to get our volunteers involved in our local community. And every time we do that, we tell them about these projects and, about the Community Wildlife Habitat Project and how they can get involved and how they can certify their property. And so again, we do so much with our tourists, but so much of the work that we do really does go back into the local community and our residents and the people who are going to, be there for us all year round.
And I'm just curious, with engaging your volunteers and looking at some of your projects beyond individual properties, do you have any certified habitats that are in schools? Schoolyards?
We were working on some. I don't believe we have any properties at the moment, but we do have a couple schools that we have been in contact with who we're gonna, because they're an easy certification most of the time. And so that's, been a big focus for us too, is working with a lot of these, properties and, kind of like Courtney was saying, our businesses and our places of worship and our schools and our local parks, because we have so many and they typically have all of the resources needed. And so we will definitely work with our schools. And that's another thing too. We use our schools as resources for volunteers to get volunteers. A lot of these local organizations and businesses, we're always recruiting in, every place that we can. And so it's, an easy way, not an easy way, but an easy way for us to be able to engage with them and work with them and help them, create this habitat.
Great. Thanks. Thanks for sharing that. Let's move to Carly, because South Lake Beach has a whole sustainability infrastructure. And you have fertilizer bans, low impact development, invasive species removal. And how is the National Wildlife Certification connected to those projects or build on things that you're already doing?
Well, our city staff has an amazing team that has been working together for a few years now with a major focus on sustainability in mind. And now more than ever, I think we're trying to integrate that into all aspects of city operation more effectively. And from everything you mentioned, all those things come with educating the residents, like on our city website, having free lunch and learn sessions, doing workshops. We have a lot of other things like events that we host yearly to try and get the word out. Um, we also ourselves have been trying to work on our own habitat wildlife certifications and having all of those checked boxes so we can certify our own city parks. Um,
Mhm. Yeah.
just recently, we decided to leave a wildlife snag, which is a dead pine tree, at a safe height that won't harm anybody walking nearby, specifically for cavity nesters. And we're going to be educating the public on why we left it there. And hopefully that inspires others to keep that in mind in their own properties. But I think that the National Wildlife Federation really helps us take it a step further and connect our initiatives and support wildlife with the residents and being able to take those small steps to participate in a process and educate themselves about this importance of the supportive coexistence between today's world and nature, not just in the parks themselves, but take that ownership back with them at their own home.
Yeah, you mentioned, we were, I think I'm initially thinking about the city of Satellite Beach as being urban, which it is. It's not rural, but also you talked about because it's on a barrier island, it's a small community, small geographically. So do you have anything else you can tell us about how the conservation work works in your coastal communities? Like, what does it actually look like there?
Well,
Anything you can add with that?
our city owns quite a bit of land that is dedicated to nature and wildlife, roughly around 120 acres for a very small city of 11,000 population, about a mile wide, 2 miles long. We are very much a barrier island, and so our ecosystem has a lot of challenges that come with that. The
Yeah.
invasive species are aggressive, and it can only take a year or two before they can get out of control. And that picture right there is a great example of an invasive species that is on our beaches dunes that is actually hindering our resilience to storms. And so we definitely proactively remove those things and try to plant native plants in the off season of hurricane season to create more resilient ecosystems. We have a 58-acre nature island made out of spoils from a dredge many years ago, and that is a gem of the city. It's a untouched nature park. We have 9 free campsites for the residents to use. But that in itself has wildlife on a specific island, specifically gopher tortoises. And their management are also a high priority, making sure that they have the proper habitat that supports their ecological needs and to make them a healthy, happy, thriving population. And we can't just sit back and do nothing because being on an island unmanaged, I'm sure most of us understand what can happen with that if you look at our highways, roadways. So that's just a lot of focus of our environmental aspects as of just recently, but there's so many other things like community vegetated buffer shoreline plantings that we focus on and try to get the community involved in. We do one as an example, and we try to show we walk the walk and talk the talk, and you can too. Just trying to inspire others to take on projects like this at their own home and really try to take a step back from the wrong wording that used to be out there about native plants, about how they have high maintenance and that they are messy or that they get out of control. With everything, it requires some sort of maintenance, but we really are trying to show that it's a beautiful concept that you can incorporate in your yard that's easily done.
Great. That's another thing I think that you're doing that makes it really helpful to people to understand, what the goals are and how they can do it in a way that's not so difficult. Having those demonstrations that people can see is really helpful, I think. Let's see. What, Jessica, what education or outreach projects do you have in the works? Is there anything that you haven't mentioned already? You've touched on several things, but maybe just to give people an idea of a specific education program that you've done as part of the program or an outreach program.
Yeah, so I mean, we designed a handful of outreach materials. So like brochures on, what is needed to certify your property, lists of native plants that are easy and accessible to, people living in the area. We have a whole list of our threatened and endangered species that people can reference. So, being able to hand those out to people and just show them that it's not that hard and that they might have some of these things already, but we do really like with outreach and education, that is a huge part of our natural resources program in general. We are always at festivals, events, whether it be coastal about sea turtles, about, we had a fire festival recently. I mean, we're doing all sorts of different things, and we set up booths at any sort of outreach event that we possibly can. And so this is always something that we're there promoting. So we'll use all of these materials that we've created, that we have, and kind of piggyback off of anything else we're already doing. Like we, talk about our program in general and about our different projects, but this is one thing. And so we're always getting the word out. We don't have any, big upcoming outreach events for this specifically. But, I'm sure come fall, maybe when things are a little less crazy, we can really start focusing on those more. But even going to like our, like a lot of our local nurseries, our plant nurseries, they will have plant events like native planting workshops and things. And so when, they have stuff like that, we'll jump in on that and piggyback off of those, and anything that, we can just get our information out. We are.
Yeah. And education is an outreach, and y'all are both doing a lot of that. And it's such an important component of your programs and of the community wildlife habitat program. So, I wanted to also ask, so with Carly, this program, the community habitat program, can prompt communities to pursue public policy changes. And have y'all in Satellite Beach done any of that, or is any of that on the horizon?
We haven't done anything yet, but I'm not taking it out of being in the horizon. The past few years, we've been really working on establishing environmentally focused advisory boards to focus on projects like these and take them to the council. And that's how it can enact change and policy changes in the future. We have a tree and beautification board that is doing a program of Yard of the Month right now, which has a lot of the same criteria that the habitat program that we have. And so we're trying to slowly take baby steps to getting to the certifications through that way, and then inspire it through the council and the boards themselves.
It sounds like Satellite Beach actually already has some public policy or municipal policy that really supports sustainability and conservation.
We've had it in place for a while now. We've had a few things back in the day. We kind of led the pioneering way on the sustainability in municipalities. We do have tree protection ordinances. All the requirements that come with being Tree City USA, we have recently implemented. That's why we have a tree and beautification board. We have landscaping requirements for new development that requires 50% native plantings at the minimum, and a bunch of other criteria as well. So I think we have a really good solid foundation on our policies as of now, but everything can always be improved to even take it the next step further. And I think we're just working in that between stage now of educating and inspiring others.
Yeah, that 50% native planting, I mean, that's a major step. And was your community, do you know, did that happen before you came on? Do you know how your community was involved in that, or did they support that? Was it something that was a big push?
It was before my time, so the correct details are not exact for me, but I do know it was a residential push for sure. Our boards
Yeah.
are from volunteers that are residents themselves, and they bring things up to council to get them pushed farther and farther, and other residents come to have their input as well. So I do know that was very much resident driven, very environmentally friendly residents pursuing that.
Great. How about Jessica? How about with your community? Have y'all pursued policy changes?
We haven't yet, but thankfully we have great support from our Board of County Commissioners within our Tourism Development Council. So when we get to that point, again, kind of like Carly was saying, we're getting the support and the backing that we need from the community. And then, we'll move forward from there. But we have great support with
Good.
everything that we do. And in the environmental side of the work that's been done within Okaloosa County is newer. I mean, there hasn't been as much of a focus on it. 10 years ago, they weren't doing anything like we have been doing now. And so
Sure. Yeah.
it's, and things just take time. Unfortunately, like we'd all love for it to happen tomorrow, but it takes, working with our local community and working with our residents and showing them, why these things are important and to have that support for us to move forward. So although, we haven't done anything, since, or we haven't done anything yet, but I mean, that does not mean that we won't pursue something in the future.
Yeah. Courtney, are any specific examples or, a couple that stand out to you where there have been policy changes that have been tied to the Community Wildlife Habitat program?
Sure. Quite a few teams have been able to work with their city governments on tree ordinances, adding to building permits if you'll do a native plant salvage. Some of the other kind of activities to build relationships with city government has been like asking for proclamations for like Garden for Wildlife Month or Pollinator Month, or when you're certify and you have your annual anniversary as a community wildlife habitat team. Or even challenges where you, as a team, challenge the park advisory board to all certify their homes, or some of the city leadership, kind of a challenge to get them connected to the program a little more, right? Because they might hear you or they might read about it, but sometimes it just takes them hearing it one more time or them getting personally involved for city and government and kind of resident leaders to kind of activate them and get them really understanding all the networking that can happen and kind of how they can pull in existing programming or departments. And so there's kind of lots of fun strategies for that. And we do have a lot of templates, like proclamation templates, or even templates to letters to your mayor or your governor in our resource center, as well as kind of stories to share on our website of what other teams are doing. And so those are always inspiring to see how across the nation folks are connecting with local government and making policy changes.
Yeah, that's great. We're seeing some questions come up in the comments that I think are sort of tying into what we're talking about. So we can move into that part of our program and get the direct questions from our audience. Let's see. Yeah, and one of the first ones, and I'll just ask you, somebody specifically to start off, but and then anyone else can join in if you have something that really is, comes up that's specific to your community. From YouTube, we have a question. Well, it starts out as a statement. It says the Panhandle needs to step up. And what's the best way to get our community involved? And maybe since you're in the Panhandle, Jessica, you could start with that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I touched on it a tiny bit in the beginning. This was something that we worked on right away 5 years ago when I first started. And then a lot of the people that I was working with, that were part of my committee went different ways. And so we got busy within our own program. And so we kind of, put the program on the back burner. But with the expansion of our team and our, throughout the entire county, we want to start bringing it back and really start focusing on it a lot more now than we have been. So love for you to reach out to me, especially if you are in Okaloosa County. My contact information will be available. I would love help, support, anything we can do. We do a lot. We are tourism, so we are focused on our tourists, but we do so much within our local community. So any local events that go on throughout Okaloosa County, we are likely there, especially if they are environmentally focused. So our logo is Destin Fort Walton Beach, and that's typically what you're going to see on our tent and our tablecloth. But come talk to us if you want to get involved and help spread the information. We will happily provide you with resources. We are currently getting a website for our natural resources department. So I think that will be linked later. Right now, our website is very tourism focused, but we will be having a separate website for our natural resources department. And all of our resources, contact information, everything is going to be available there. And so we will have a whole section dedicated to the Community Wildlife Habitat Program as well, where people can, learn how to certify their property. They can get involved. They can get our local resources on plants, animals, all of that kind of stuff. So, but my contact information will be provided. So please reach out.
Thank you. We have two questions about pesticide use. And Carly, I'm going to ask you, and you can, let us know what your thoughts are on it or what your experience is in Satellite Beach. And one, Christine from YouTube asked us, how did you deal with the city government and pesticide use? And the other's a little broader. Cynthia had asked, how do you educate residents about pesticide use? So.
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. A while ago, we had a resolution passed, it was a few years ago now, that prohibits the use of glyphosate, which is the chemical typically in Roundup, on all city-owned properties, and not allowing contractors to use it on our properties as well. So that's how we were able to self-govern ourselves and make sure that we are doing the right thing. We also have a fertilizer ban that's in place from June 1st to September 30th. That helps prevent adding more nitrogen and phosphorus washing down our storm drains that lead directly to the Indian River Lagoon, which is basically surrounding our barrier island and has a lot to do with the lagoon health and people's habits around their own backyards. And then for educating residents, we try to do our best on social media by putting out tips and information on why certain things are bad, glyphosate is bad. We also have a residential newsletter that goes out to every resident bi-monthly that has this type of information and a heads up that these things are coming, and educational resources for what's the best practices when it comes to pesticide use.
I think this will be helpful to people too, because hearing that you were able to do the pesticide ban and then the fertilizer halting during our rainy season when we have a lot of runoff from our storms, people might give people ideas, and they can also reach out to all of you to just see how get suggestions on how that was, maybe specifics on how that was done. So let's see. And this, this was for Carly. Someone from Instagram wants to know what the invasive on the dunes was.
We call it scavola. The full name I might not be able to pronounce correctly, but it's something like beach napuka. It's a Hawaiian native plant that traveled here through somehow or another, and it takes root on our dunes and bare sand pretty easily. It doesn't have a good root structure, so it has no resilience components when it comes to storm resilience. So we like to get rid of that and replace it with better things like sea oats and sea grapes and things like that.
That was a pretty, I want to say it was a good photo, a good representative photo of what an invasive looks like. I mean, that was an impressive picture. Yeah. Of a scary invasive. So we have another question. Christine from YouTube asked, like, how do you approach a community? Is it always through a governing body? And Courtney, you might want to talk about this because you have a, perspective on a lot of communities and how the different approach to forming a community project is started.
Thanks. Yeah, a community wildlife habitat team can start in any number of ways. It can be just community volunteers who are interested, maybe retired. It can be landscapers that are interested in making a larger impact in their community. It can be city, county, or municipal staff who see how it connects to the work they're already doing. It can start from a school and some, caring parents and teachers, and then blossom into, let's form a more kind of sustainable, well-rounded team that represents our whole community. So we might start with these three folks, but then you'll reach out to some of these other partners, nonprofits, government agencies, and schools. Reach out and invite them to join the team. So teams start in a variety of manners. It's just people who care and kind of see how everyone is doing such good work or really care about different issues, and that if they come together, that there's kind of more strength in the networking and the and I think it feels like it's more sustainable, that it's more natural to have kind of ebbs and flows and the activities you're doing or the work you're doing if you have a team that you can kind of reference back to. We do have lots of resources on our website about how to start a team, how to get started. We have kind of a toolkit and kind of how-to guides to help folks. We have templates on how to ask a nonprofit partner to join your team, or for the mayor to encourage their staff to join your team. So we'd love to support you in starting a new team. So please reach out.
Great, thank you. That's a good overview, I think, of the different ways that communities come together. So Michael on Facebook asks, and this might be, I think, directed to Carly. It says, can native plants directly support the nearby waterways, and more specifically in terms of filtering the water of pollutants and harmful chemicals, like Indian River Lagoon or the Satellite Beach, for example?
Yeah, that's exactly the initiative we're pushing, as native plants are doing this, and they're doing it in a way underground. Their root system has like a symbiotic relationship with all the other organisms that live within it. And they work in like a partnership through very small root hair absorption to do something called active transplant, which takes in a chemical and in a sense recycles it into a better one to be released into the environment to be reused in a different way. These things are like small fungi. They're called like epiphytes that live on these plants. And together, that's how they will absorb things like people that wash their cars off in the driveway. That runoff will go directly down the storm drains. And if they did that in the grass and had plants that would be able to have a chance to absorb those chemicals that run off from the washing your car before it gets down the storm drain, is the initiative that we really want people to think about and keep in mind when you're living in a dune barrier system where everything we do affects the ecosystem around us, for sure, just like everywhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen a lot of issues, particularly in the warmer weather, with places like the Indian River Lagoon and algae blooms and problems with pollutants and just nitrogen from runoff from fertilizers. So, yeah, right. This is a question, and obviously anybody in Florida, any of our programs in Florida could answer this, but we'll go back to Jessica. Um, And maybe we'll talk to both of you about this. And because there's a question of how can we work around Florida's gardening challenges like heat and somewhat you've addressed coastal conditions. But Jessica, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the obvious answer is you plant native plants. I mean, like they're supposed to be growing here. So if you're planting grasses and plants in your yard that are used to the Florida climate, like they should be low maintenance. They should, thrive well enough. I mean, I know Florida weather is unpredictable and we go through these crazy periods of hot and cold, but plants that are naturally already here, they're the ones that are going to be able to withstand that and survive through these drier seasons and these more wet seasons. And so, it's tough in Florida because a lot of our native plants are not as soft and green and beautiful as a lot of people want their yards to be. But those are going to be the ones that, are easier to take care of. You don't need to do nearly as much maintenance to them. You're reducing your water usage. So I feel like that's, just kind of the first answer, but a lot of people don't know what those are. And so being able to provide them with, a list of native easy plants, especially for the areas. I mean, I'm sure Satellite Beach, your native plants are probably very different than what we have up here that, that can survive well here. So it's, providing them with those resources and where to get them and what's easy is huge. And, I think like we have like UF IFAS and Sea Grant up here, which I think, is throughout the state of Florida, but they always have a ton of resources when it comes to native plants and how to care for them and when to plant them. And those are all readily available to anybody who wants them.
I'm just curious, do you have a couple favorite resilient go-to native plants? Obviously it'll be for the north, the Panhandle region. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like for us, and a lot of the work that I do personally is coastal. So like, and Carly mentioned it too, our sea oats. Our sea oats are so important and they do so much for our dune system down here. And we do, we don't have nearly as many invasive plants, thankfully, within our dune system as you do. But that's just such an easy one for people to jump on to. And they can plant them not even just within our dunes, like within our, bays and our estuary system. They work well there as well. So, that's one of my favorite easy ones.
Great.
Carly might have some good suggestions too for.
Yeah. Carly, do you have anything particular about the planting and heat and
Yeah, no, I would say honestly, oak trees, because that establishes a canopy, which allows so many other things to flourish underneath it. If you're trying to combat heat, some of these heat islands, especially on these barrier islands, it's so hot and it's a desert out here. And providing shade for your own house and your own yard, for your own plants that are having a hard time surviving, just being in the wide open. And then, of course, supporting wildlife, being a keystone species. I can't support planting oaks more.
Thanks for mentioning that. And I think sometimes that gets might get lost in the conversation of what beautiful blooms are we going to have and how to support pollinators and planting our native trees, especially the keystone species, is an ideal way to support pollinators and, as you say, provide shade and thanks. Okay. All right. Well, we're at the time where we need to wrap up. But to sum up, I just want to say that what y'all are doing, what your communities are doing, is really part of a larger story about whether Florida's wildlife has a future in our increasingly developing state. And you just want to emphasize that individual, as you have, that individual gardens, individual actions really matters because habitat connectivity really matters. And as FWF continues our advocacy work, we just want to reinforce how meaningful and supportive this conservation work is that you're doing in your own communities, that people are doing in their own backyards. And as we leave today, we hope that people will consider just taking one of these actions, like planting a native plant that can provide food and shelter for local wildlife, uh, going out and sharing the benefits of wildlife gardening with your neighbors, with community officials, community leaders, and then consider certifying your garden. We've got the information on how to do that through National Wildlife Habitat. And you might also consider getting one of our Florida Wildlife Habitat signs, garden signs, just as a way of showing your commitment to Florida wildlife and sparking conversations with your neighbors and showing like the intention around your gardening. So we also encourage you to connect with each of the organizations that are represented here tonight. And so going to go to them and ask, starting with Courtney, like, where's the best way for your audience to learn about? You've mentioned it again, but we can bring it up again, like for your audience to learn more about the Community Wildlife Habitat Program.
Yeah, I want to say thank you to Florida Wildlife Federation and to our team leaders who joined us tonight. Very inspiring. And I just like Dan saying, I really hope you all will join the over 315,000 certified habitat gardeners across the nation and nearly 400 community wildlife habitat teams in creating resilient habitats. And you can start by using our Certified Wildlife Habitat Assessment quiz. But please visit our website to learn more and connect with resources, tip sheets, guides, videos, or contact me directly. It would be very nice to hear from you.
Thank you. Thank you. And Jessica, how can people learn more about your efforts?
Yeah. So, like I said, we are currently making a website for our Natural Resources Department. So that will be coming within the next month or so. But for now, if you go to destinfwb.com, that is our Tourism Development Department website. But there is a lot on that website about our Natural Resources Department and a lot of the projects that we're working on. So, but again, once we get the Natural Resources website up and running, it will have a ton of information and you'll be able to get there from destinfwb.com. So stay tuned.
Great. Thank you. And then Carly, let us know how people can connect with your community efforts in Satellite Beach.
You guys can please feel free to follow our Facebook and our Instagram at Sustainable Satellite. And on those media pages, we have a website link as well that goes to our local government page. That has a sustainability portion that talks about all of our natural resources initiatives and the sustainability efforts and the habitat certification program.
Great, thank you. And if y'all haven't connected yet with the Florida Wildlife Federation, please make sure to sign up for our newsletter. It's really a great way to stay updated, to learn about action alerts, to learn about live stream updates and events that we are hosting and offering throughout the state in different communities. And then on behalf of FWF, I want to again thank the panelists. Your work really inspires us. And also thank you to the people who tuned in tonight. And we encourage you to just to stay engaged and to speak up for the wildlife and the places that mean the most to you. So thank you for your support and for your passion.